समुद्रस्य हिमाद्रश्चैव दक्षिणं वर्षं तद् भारतं नाम भारतीयत्र सन्तति।
Namaste. Welcome to this episode of Itihasa. In this episode of Itihasa, we will learn about Bharatavarsha. We will learn about what it means to be Bharatiya. We will learn about Bharatavarsha culturally, geographically, and what it means in terms of our heritage and civilization. What is the Itihasa?
भारत, इस एक शब्द की कैसे व्याख्या करें? शब्दों की कलाकारी का सहारा लें तो कह सकते हैं हजारों वर्षों की निरंतरता, परंपराओं से समृद्ध, लोक आस्था से अनुप्राणित, भावनाओं से ओतप्रोत, प्रकृति के प्रति समर्पित, मानवता उत्थान को लक्षित, दैवीय सत्ता के प्रति अगाध आस्था से तरंगित। मानव सभ्यता के इतिहास में एक अद्भुत आभा लिए समाज, वैसा समाज जिसने गहन चिंतन और सृष्टि से साम्य के बल पर एक अलौकिक संसार रचा। एक ऐसा संसार जो ना जाने कितने हजार वर्षों से संपूर्ण विश्व के लिए एक रहस्य बना हुआ है। प्रश्न है कि भारत भूमि का हिस्सा है या एक विचार? गौर से देखें तो भारत एक विचार अधिक है, एक ऐसी संकल्पना जिसके चारों तरफ भौतिक संसार रचा बसा है। देखते हैं क्या है वो विचार। विज्ञान, गणित, अर्थशास्त्र, साहित्य और भाषा। कला, संस्कृति, नाट्य और संगीत, स्थापत्य, वास्तुकला, आयुर्वेद, शल्य क्रिया, ज्योतिर्विज्ञान, योग और दर्शन शास्त्र जैसे ज्ञान से संपूर्ण विश्व का पथ प्रदर्शित करने वाला देश भारत। भारत, जिसे कभी पश्चिम ने सपेरों और अज्ञानियों का देश कहा, मानव सभ्यता के पहले दस्तावेज के रूप में प्रतिष्ठित वेदों को गडेरियों के गीत तक कहा। दुर्भाग्यजनक रूप से इतिहास में भी भारत को कुछ इसी तरह से चित्रित और रेखांकित किया गया। इतिहास तथ्यों, घटनाओं की समय और क्रम के अनुसार विवेचना पर आधारित होता है, न कि पूर्वाग्रहों पर। लेकिन भारत का इतिहास पूर्वाग्रहों से ग्रसित मानसिकता वाले इतिहासकारों ने गढ़ा। जो देश सबसे प्राचीन सभ्यताओं की भूमि रही, जिसकी भौगोलिक सीमाओं के प्रमाण हजारों साल पहले वेद पुराणों में दर्ज किए गए थे, उस देश के इतिहास को आर्यों के हमले के सिद्धांत या आर्यन इन्वेजन थ्योरी के नाम पर तोड़ मरोड़ कर पेश किया गया। यहाँ के साहित्य को प्रमाण के योग्य ही नहीं माना गया, जबकि साहित्य ही नहीं, वैज्ञानिक साक्ष्यों ने भी भारतवर्ष की भौगोलिक स्थिति और इसकी अवधारणा को प्रमाणित किया है। भारत को प्राचीन काल से वर्तमान समय तक अलग अलग नामों से जाना जाता रहा है। प्राचीन काल में इसे मेलुहा, जम्बूद्वीप, आर्यवर्त, भरतखंडे, भारतवर्ष इत्यादि के नाम से जाना जाता था। जबकि मध्यकाल में इसे सिंध, हिंद, हिंदुस्तान, इंडस जैसे नामों से जाना गया। भारतवर्ष के जिन पर्वतों, नदियों और सागरों का वर्णन पुराणों में किया गया है, वो आज भी भारतीय उपमहाद्वीप में स्थित हैं। भारतवर्ष की अवधारणा को समझने के लिए हमें इसके मूल में झांकने की जरूरत है। भाषाओं, जातियों और उपासना पद्धतियों में विभिन्नताएं होने के बावजूद आध्यात्मिकता ही है जो सबको एक बनाती है। तो इतिहास की इस कड़ी में हम जानेंगे कैसे आकार लिया भारत के इस विचार ने, किन सिद्धांतों के आधार पर बना मानव सभ्यता का विशाल भवन, और क्या रहा घटनाक्रम। तो आइए चलते हैं इतिहास की यात्रा पर।
In this episode, I am joined by my colleague, friend, author, historian, Sanjeev Sanyal. Sanjeev, welcome to this.
It's a pleasure.
And in this rather unusual episode of Itihasa, we are joined by Satish ji, Krishnan ji, Bharadwaj ji, who have come all the way from Chennai so that we can listen to some wonderful chants. So can we start with the chants explaining what Bharatvarsha is?
Om Uttarena Samudrasya Himadreshchaiva Dakshine Varsham Tad Bharatam Nama Bharati Yatra Santatihi Yojananam Sahasram Cha Dvipoyam Dakshinottarade Purve Kiratasthishtanti Paschime Yavanasthitaha.
Satish ji, most people have understood what you have just chanted. But briefly, what exactly do these two chants say?
This is taken from the Brahma Purana, the description about the Jambudvipam, and this particular shloka says, to the northern of the ocean and to the south of the Himalayan mountain, the place is called the Bharata, and the people who live in that place are called Bharati. And the measurement also is given, Yojananam Sahasram. This island, Dvipa, is given here, has the measurement of 1000 yojanas from Dakshina to Uttara, the south to north. And for the eastern side of this island, there are Kirata living, and for the western side, Yavana are living.
So the earth was divided into deepas, which are a bit like continents.
Yes.
And each deepa was divided into subcontinents called varshas.
Yes.
So Bharata Varsha is part of Jambu Deepa. Kiratas were hunters, and Yavanas identified with Ionians or Greeks. Sanjeev, you have recently delivered a wonderful talk on Bharata Varsha. So tell us a little bit about Bharata Varsha, first on the geography part of it.
So as you just heard, the ancient understanding of our landscape of Bharatvarsha or India, and this is the Puranic period, tells us that we are the people who lived south of the snowy mountains of the Himalayas and north of the ocean. Now, this is interesting when this conception of India came about. because we can date this because we know that the Greeks are living to the west and the Kiratas or the Tibetan Burmans live to the east. Now the Tibetan Burmans still live to the east, but the interesting part is the Ionians or the Greeks are living to our west. Now if the Ionians are living to our west, this must be the period from somewhere around the 3rd or 2nd century BC, because just after the Alexander's invasion, there was a period when the Seleucid dynasty and the Indo-Greeks ruled just west to us. So this is therefore dealing with somewhere in the 2nd, 3rd century BC, when we had already had a very clear conception of this. Now, this incidentally, as you yourself know, is something that's repeated over and over again pretty much every one of the Puranas. Some of these Puranas are much older, of course, than the Brahma Purana. So clearly, more than 2000 years ago, we already had a clear conception of this landscape being the landscape of where the Bharatas lived. But there is a much older conception of where the Bharatas come from, and this is quite interesting because in the Rig Veda, there is a conception of the Bharatas as a small tribe living in roughly what is now Haryana on the banks of a river called the Saraswati. So the real story of India is how a Bronze Age tribe identified as the Bharata Trutsu came to be identified with the whole subcontinent. That is the real story.
You mentioned the Vedas, and in the Vedas, there is a reference to a battle of the 10 kings. How does the battle of 10 kings fit into this evolution over time?
So the battle of 10 kings is absolutely critical to understanding the Vedic literature. In fact, it is the only very clear political event that appears in the Vedic literature, and it's clearly also the earliest political event that we know of at all in Indian history. So in this battle, what happens is the following. We have this tribe living in what is roughly now Haryana on the banks of the Saraswati. This tribe is called the Bharata or the Trutsu tribe. It has a chieftain called Sudasa and his guru, who is Rishi Vasishtha. Now, at some point in time, they are attacked by an alliance of 10 tribes or 10 chieftains from the west. And the Bharatas cross the Saraswati. They go all the way up to the Ravi, which is then called the Parushni. And there is a grand battle in which the Bharatas completely defeat the alliance of 10 tribes. There is this description of how the fleeing enemies are drowned in the river, and something like 6,066 of the enemy warriors are killed in this battle. So this is really the beginning of that and of the story.
Satish ji, there is a beautiful chant on the battle of the 10 kings. Can we hear that?
Yes, sure. Om Dasharaja Nasamita Ayajjavas Sudasamindra Varuna Nayuyudhu Satya Nrinamadmasadhamupastutir Deva Eshamabhavan Devahudishu Dasharagye Pariyattaya Vishwatas Sudasa Indra Varunavashikshatam Shvityancho Yatra Namasa Kapardino Dhiya Dhivanto Asapanta Tritsavaha.
What does this mean?
This is the mantra taken from the 7th mandala of the Rig Veda, featuring in the 83rd Sukta. 7th and 8th mantra are these two mantras. Basically, whatever Mr. Sanjeev ji has conveyed, all those things are covered here. 10 kings has the battle with this Sudasa king, but they could not defeat him. And Indra Varuna were protecting him, protecting the Sudasa, and the Trutsava is the name for Vasishtha itself. The Vasishtha was also assisting this Sudasa. So these 10 kings together could not defeat the Sudasa. This is the total, the summary of these two mantras.
So, for the benefit of the viewer, Vashishta is not necessarily one particular individual.
Yes.
It is a lineage, and there were several rishis who were called Vashishtas.
Absolutely, yes.
So, Sanjeev, we have heard this chant about Sudasa. What happens to King Sudasa after this?
So King Sudasa then turns to the east. He defeats a chieftain or tribe called Bheda on the banks of the Yamuna. So he now has this large empire going from Punjab through Haryana, through Delhi, all to western UP. And he then conducts the Ashwamedha Rajasuya Yagyas and is declared as the first Chakravartin.
What's the difference between an Ashwamedha and a Rajasuya?
I'm not quite sure. They are...
No, just translate it. So an Ashwamedha is a horse sacrifice.
It is a horse sacrifice.
Rajasuya is a royal sacrifice.
Royal sacrifice.
And typically in both I end up becoming a Chakravarti, which means
Yes.
I'm an universal emperor because my chakra travels everywhere unimpeded.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is roughly what it is.
continue.
You are the expert on this. But what is really interesting is what the Bharata tribe then does after this happens. Now, as you can imagine, the custom would have been, and it's not uncommon even today, that once a tribe has defeated another tribe, it then declares that its gods are more powerful than the gods of the defeated tribe and imposes its own gods on the defeated tribe. Common phenomena throughout history. But the Bharatas do something quite different. What they do is, they actually call in all the defeated tribes, including, for example, the Bhrigus, who were one of the defeated tribes, Vishwamitra, who was actually a rival of Vashishta, and so on, and they put together all the knowledge of all these tribes into a compilation that we now know as the Vedas. Now, this is a very unique idea of assimilation as opposed to imposition. And this is there clearly almost like a contract, both in the very first and the very last chant of the Rig Veda. So if you hear the very first chant, in that it's dedicated to Agni, where it declares that we are paying homage to both the ancient rishis and the modern ones. So remember, this is in the Bronze Age. They are already paying homage to even earlier rishis. So this is important because the Rig Veda does not claim to be the beginning point, but a continuation and assimilation of what already exists. And then in the very last chant of the Rig Veda, there is almost like a contract when all the tribes say that we will provide a space around the sacrificial fire for all the ancient gods. Now, this is an absolutely critical idea because with this, essentially the conception of Bharata starts not as a tribe, but as a civilization.
We will hear in a minute what you have described as the first chant and as the last chant. Satish ji, the chants that Sanjeev Sanyal referred to just now, particularly the last one, or part of the last one, is famous, and most people will have heard it at some point or the other. So can we listen to these two chants, please? The first one and the last one.
Yes. Om Agnimile Purohitam Yajnasya Devamritwijam Hotaram Ratnadatamam Agnif Purve Bhirrishi Bhiridyo Nutanairuta Sadevanye Havakshati Om Samidyo Vase Vrishannagne Shvanyarya Ilaspade Samidhyase Sano Vasonyabhara Samgachadvam Samvadadvam Samvo Manamsi Janatam Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve
सञ्जानाना उपासते समानो मन्त्रः समीतिः समानी समानं मनः सह चित्तमेषाम् समानं मन्त्रमभिमन्त्रयेव समानेन वो हविषा जुहोमि समानीव आकूतिः समाना हृदयानि वः समानमस्तु वो मनो यथा वस्सु सहासति ॐ.
What does the first chant mean? What does it say?
Basically, the first chant, Agni Mele Purohitam, is about Agni. Interestingly, as Sanjeev sir said, the word Purvaihi and Nutanaihi is essential here. So, Agni was worshipped by the ancient rishis also and the upcoming rishis also, Nutanaihi, new ones also.
And remember, this is the Bronze Age. So the Nutan as in at that time.
Yes, yes. And the ancient also. So this is the summary, I mean essential
The summary, yes.
point of this mantra.
What does the last one say?
Here everyone should come together. That is the message given in this mantra. Sangachadvam, samvadadvam.
Particularly from Sangachodhang, because so many people have heard it and sometimes they don't know what it means. So from that bit, Sangachodhang, will you translate it?
Yes, Gamanam is going together. Samgachadvam, Gamanam is going, Sangachadvam, we go together. Our target, our goal should be one. So we achieve our goal together. That is the essence. And Samvadadvam, we speak together. Normally, when we speak different opinions may be different, but we cannot come together and come at a what we call come to a conclusion together. So that is very important here. So we come at a conclusion together.
So Sanjeev, this notion of being Bharatiya, it spread geographically, and it was not a homogeneous culture in any sense. It was several different kinds of cultures, if we use the word culture in the standard sense. So how did it spread?
So this idea of assimilation, i.e. that all the gods could be accommodated around the fire, is an extremely powerful idea. So what happens is that this idea begins to spread, and more tribes further and further out contribute their gods to this space, are given a space around the fire. Not only are the gods given, and as a part of the contract, so to speak, of the chant that you just heard, they then accept the gods of everybody else. This is the reason that you and I are Bengali, we are not Haryanavi, but we call ourselves Bharatiya, because at some ancient point in time, our ancestors accepted this idea, they contributed their gods to the fire and accepted everybody else's gods. So this idea spread like wildfire all around the subcontinent. In fact, eventually went through to Southeast Asia, went through to Central Asia, and became a very, very powerful idea. So you see this clearly coming through in the spread of how, for example, we think of the Sapta Sindhu and what is the geographical area, and we will come to that in a subsequent episode, as you know. But let me show, since there is a lot of debate about Aryan and Dravidian and so on, this idea spread also to the southern tip of India, not just eastward or westward, but to the southern tip of India. So you have, for example, the most ancient Tamil literature, the Sangam literature. Here, you see this idea being clearly articulated. So the oldest text of the Sangam literature is the Tolpakkiyam. Now, let me clarify what the Sangam literature is. Sangam literature is a collection of poetry written between the 3rd century BC and the 3rd century AD. They are collections of poetry. And the oldest of these texts is a grammatical treatise called the Tolpakkiyam. Now, in this text, which is, by the way, there is literally no older Tamil text. In this text, there is a preface that is written in which there is the oldest known articulation of Tamil identity. And so the preface goes as follows: in the virtuous Tamil speaking land that extends from Venkatam in the north to Kumari in the south. So Kumari in the south is Kanyakumari. It's still in Tamil Nadu at the southern tip of India. And Venkatam in the north, which is the Tirumala Hills, Tirupati, which is also near the border. It's today in Andhra territory, but it's quite interesting that even today the Tamil Nadu can be traced using this ancient description. So this is the first and oldest proclamation of Tamil identity. However, here comes the interesting part. The same preface, just a few lines below, also states that this entire Tolpakiyam text and the entire Tamil grammar is in the wisdom of the four Vedas rooted. In other words, the first proclamation of Tamil identity is rooted in the wisdom of the four Vedas. So whenever the Tolpakiyam was written, whenever a clear identity of Tamil identity emerged, it was already a part of Vedic and by extension Bharatiya civilization.
Sanjeev, thank you. So we have just, Satish ji, we have just heard Sanjeev tell us about this preface. He's already given us the gist of it, so you need not translate it. Can we hear it being chanted?
Vadavenkadam ten kumariyayidai Tamil korum nal ulagattu Vazhakkum seyyulum ayurumudalin Ezhuthum sollum porulum naadi செந்தமிழ் இயற்கை சிவனிய நிலத்தொடு முந்து நூல் கண்டு முறைப்பட எண்ணி புலம் தொகுத்தோனே போக்கு அருபணுவல் நிலம் தரு திருவின் பாண்டியன் அவையத்து அறம் கரை நாவின் நான்மறை காட்டி மல்குநீர் வரைப்பீன் ஐந்திரம் நிறைந்த தொல்காப்பியன் எனத் தன் பெயர் தோற்றி பல்புகழ் நிறுத்த படிமையோனே.
Sanjeev, thank you very much for joining us in this episode of Itihasa. Namaste. We hope to see you again in the next episode. Satish ji, Krishnan ji, Bharadwaj ji, thank you very much for joining us, enriching this episode. Hope to see you again in the next episode.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Itihasa. As you will have gathered from this episode, the notion of Bharatavarsha, the notion of being Bharatiya, it evolved over a period of time. It also involved certain geographical aspects which we have not been able to cover in this episode. We will be joined by the same guests in the next episode, where we will focus a little bit more on Bharatvarsha's geography, the mountains and the rivers. Please continue to watch Itihasa on Sansad TV.
उत्तरं यत् समुद्रस्य हिमाद्रश्चैव दक्षिणं वर्षं तद् भारतं नाम भारतीयत्र सन्ततिः